Welcome back. It's time for another dose of Murdoch Mysteries, and today is a good'un. So listen, one thing that is great about Murdoch Mysteries is that it doesn't ever take itself too seriously. And this next episode, oh boy, you can't take too seriously. Today we are looking at Season 5, Episode 6, Who Killed the Electric Carriage? Let's see how it goes this time. The story opens and it's dark. Oh yeah, Murdoch After Hours, baby. With this lady here singing Harry Dockra's A Bicycle Built for Two and taking a stroll. When suddenly, pacha! A blinding light takes her by surprise. Revved up like a deuce, another runner in the night. Man, ain't no one gonna get that reference. But no, it's real and she has to quickly get out of the way of whatever this strange thing is. I mean, the episode is called Who Killed the Electric Carriage? So, me and you know it's an automobile of some type. But you gotta remember, it's only the year 1899 at this point, so people be freaking out at this stuff. She rushes off to get away, arriving at Mr. Valinsky's place, hoping he can help. But nope, he's way too hung up to assist. The detectives show up to investigate our murder of the week. Turns out I was wrong. She's not a neighbor, but Mr. Valinsky's housekeeper. And yeah, that wasn't his home, but his workshop. Whatever, sue me. Dr. Grace, the city coroner, already doing her thing, says Valinsky was strangled before he was hung. Brutal.
Excellent work, Doctor. He was strangled then.
She rolls his carcass over. Murdoch recognized the man as Ivan Valinsky, an electrical engineer and battery inventor he met previously. Murdoch finds a discarded cigar, and the investigation gets underway. First up for questioning is the housekeeper, now identified as Mavis Chalmers, who tells the detective that Mr. Valinsky had no enemies, but did have a good number of visiting business folk on occasion, although she doesn't know much more than that, only offering the name James as a potential suspect. But the name I'm interested in, and sorry, I'm a sucker for etymology, was the Valinsky name. Clearly it's Polish, and census information on Ancestry.com tells me there was in fact a Valinsky family who moved to New York in 1920. I like to think after this episode Mavis fled the violence of Toronto for the good life. The detective scoops up another cigar bearing the same cigar band, and then outside, George decides to give his input into this whole matter.
He thought they looked extraterrestrial.
Okay. George here believes that some form of extraterrestrial committed the murder. Probably Martians.
No, sir. Venusians.
What's the difference? Oh, and what would the motive be?
Venusians, sir, have a motive for invasion.
And what would that motive be?
Well, sir, Venus is permanently beclouded. Clearly, they've somehow managed to sully their own atmosphere and now covet our clear blue skies, such as they are.
Makes sense to me. Murdoch disagrees with George and I, pointing out that the space shuttle left decidedly terrestrial tracks in the mud. A man then rolls up to the house, being introduced as Alexander Valinsky, the son of the victim. Murdoch questions him, but the Valinsky Jr. provides no useful information pertaining to his father's murder. Although we do learn that Alexander was not involved with his father's work or business dealings. Back at the station house, Dr. Grace over-explains the time of death as between 7:30 and 8 p.m. Keep in mind the body was discovered by the housekeeper at 9:30 p.m. George begins going through Valinsky's correspondences and locates a letter from a business associate named James. And with that being the second instance of this name popping up, Murdoch and George set out for the address in Willowdale, a name which sounds like it was plucked right out of another underwhelming World of Warcraft expansion. In the next scene, George and Murdoch hop over a wall to enter the Willowdale property. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, well, not out of nowhere, they clearly come from the trees, two men attempt to stop our heroes. Murdoch flashes his badge, and George is dressed like a cop anyway, so, these guys should know their roles, but...
Sir, look out!
What? Look at that little thing. It looks like it was one of those little motorcycle sidecars. And James! That's James Pendrick, a recurring character in the Murdoch-verse portrayed by Peter Stebbings. And you can bet, if it's a recurring Murdoch character, then you know he's been in SG-1. Yup, he was that guy Malik in the Season 6 Episode 10 of Stargate SG-1, The Cure. You know, where he was helping the Tok'ra save the Queen from being used to farm up Tritonin? No? You don't remember? Well, he was also that guy Marty in the X-Files episode Genderbender, where he got tackled in his underwear after killing 6 people with sex. Well, here in Murdoch Mysteries, he plays James Pendrick, an inventor who was always on the cusp of brilliance, but falls short most often due to betrayal. He offers Murdoch a ride in his converted lawnmower with historically inaccurate SAE-approved 1-gauge copper cables that won't be invented for another 6 years, and Murdoch accepts. What happens next is quite the scene, as Murdoch does his best to not look ridiculous in the Pendrick Bullet, the world's first electric car.
George, meet me back at the station.
Yes, sir.
Eventually, Murdoch arrives at Pendrick headquarters to return the Pendrick Bullet. Why are you shouting? Wait, too early.
I had it up to 55 miles per hour.
Why are you shouting? Murdoch is taken inside and presented Pendrick's vision of the future.
The Pendrick Bullet will change the face of the nation. With limitless transportation, people will no longer be confined to downtown squalor. Every man will own a house and a piece of land. Cities will be connected both internally and externally by vast highways as wide as the Champs-Élysées. Cigar?
Ah, cigar! No, wait, wrong brand. Pendrick explains he will be hosting a public offering to raise funds to have the Pendrick Bullet mass produced. It is then suggested that a potential suspect could actually be one of Mr. Pendrick's competitors, who also happens to be in Toronto to participate in a race against the Pendrick Bullet.
And who's your competitor?
Henry Ford.
Murdoch returns to the station and instructs George to summon Henry Ford for a meeting. Before George can scurry off, Alexander walks in with a bold claim. He knows who the killer is. Intrigued, Murdoch listens as Alexander recounts his visit to his father's lawyer. Apparently, Mr. Valinsky had filed a lawsuit before his untimely death. A lawsuit against none other than James Pendrick. With Valinsky gone, the lawsuit is now void, clearing the way for Pendrick's long-anticipated public offering. That's a motive if Murdoch has ever heard one. Time to bring in Pendrick for questioning. Now, Pendrick isn't thrilled. He sulks, lamenting how Murdoch always suspects him of murder. When pressed for an alibi, Pendrick coolly explains that he spent the evening at a dinner for dozens of investors. Plenty of witnesses to corroborate his story. But before Murdoch can press him further, the unmistakable rumble of a gas-guzzling planet killer interrupts them. Enter Henry Ford, right on cue. Murdoch shifts gears. Get it? Interviewing Ford, who doesn't mince words. He's not worried about the Pendrick Bullet as competition, and, very matter-of-factly, admits he did visit Mr. Valinsky the night of the murder, but just to recruit him for his company. While suspicious, Murdoch isn't convinced Ford is the killer.
I'm an engineer, detective. I build cars. If I thought the electric car were superior, I would build electric cars. But the fact is, the gasoline engine is superior.
With no clear suspect, Murdoch heads to the world's slowest race, a showdown between Pendrick's Bullet and Ford's Model A. It's here where Murdoch meets Leslie Barnes, one of Pendrick's top investors. And no, not that Leslie Barnes, the chief engineer from Die Hard 2, not that guy. This Barnes has been making some interesting moves. George reveals that Barnes is Pendrick's biggest investor, holding near-controlling shares in the company. Apparently Barnes also tried to buy out Mr. Valinsky's shares, but Valinsky refused. The race kicks off, if you can call it that, and Pendrick narrowly clinches victory. But this triumph raises a red flag. Murdoch learns that Pendrick's alibi ends at 7:30, giving him just enough time to drive the Bullet to Mr. Valinsky's workshop and commit the murder before 8 o'clock.
Motive and opportunity, George. Congratulations, Mr. Pendrick.
Thank you, Detective.
I'm placing you under arrest for the murder of Ivan Walensky.
Alright, George is carrying the investigation at this point. Next, he tells the detective that Mr. Barnes is also invested in Ford's company, leading to the discovery that Mr. Barnes actually represents big oil and gas. Alexander Valinsky, determined to ruin James Pendrick for killing his father, decides to sell his father's stock to Leslie Barnes, essentially giving him a majority control in the Pendrick Bullet.
I'm selling my father's shares to a man named Leslie Barnes. Ever heard of him?
Get him out of here.
I'm gonna see you ruined!
Oil companies, Mr. Pendrick.
When Murdoch reveals this information to Mr. Pendrick, a chase ensues as Pendrick attempts to stop Leslie Barnes' oil consortium.
Stop!
Coca-Cola consortium won't want to build my electric car. They want to destroy it.
In the final showdown, it is revealed that Mr. Barnes was also there the night Mr. Walensky died.
But I did not speak to Ivan.
Well then, who did you have a conversation with?
However, the Mr. Walensky he went to visit to was Alexander Walensky. The cogs turn in Murdoch's head, and...
$100,000. That's a lot of money. You would have inherited all of it. You would have been a rich man. But your father refused to sell.
Aw, it's always about the money. Well, at least the case is solved. So, yeah, Alexander killed his father because he refused to sell to Mr. Barnes, and in the process killed any chance for the Pendrick bullet. Who killed the electric carriage? Martians? Venusians? No, you did, for not commenting and liking. It's a decent episode, and always fun when we get to see major historical figures such as Henry Ford pop in Toronto. The B story is hardly worth mentioning, where the inspector has George investigate his wife. Turns out she was gambling, and really, it only contributes to the final scene of the episode.
You're investing the money from the Widows and Orphans Fund in the stock market?
Coca-Cola. Oh, very refreshing, sir. I suggest you try it.
George, you're investing in the fortunes of a soft drink company over the security of a Canadian government bond? That's folly, George. Business machines, Bell Telephone, General Electric, these are gambles.
Yes, but it's legal gambling, isn't it?
Oh, Detective Murdoch.